Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Mindful Eating presentation. Before we begin, I would like to go over a little housekeeping. If you require closed captioning, you can select the small white box with the 2 letter C's located on the toolbar either at the top or the bottom of your screen. You are welcome to rename yourselves for identification purposes by choosing the 3 small dots or ellipses located in the upper right corner of your personal box in Zoom, and then selecting rename. At the same time, you can also add your pronouns if you so choose. My name is Sherry Adams. I'm your student wellness counselor here at CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy. I am pleased to welcome you on behalf of Counseling Wellness Services. Today's event is the 4th in our inaugural series of events for Health and Wellness Week. It gives me great pleasure to introduce today's facilitator. Katie Schnack is a registered dietitian, certified dietitian/nutritionist, and a fellow CUNY SPH student. Katie, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. My name is Katie Schnack. I'm a dietitian, public health nutrition grad student, and I also completed my dietetic internship through the CUNY School of Public Health. And so I currently work in an inpatient hospital setting where most of my day is trying to get doctors to prescribe the correct diets to patients. So it's exciting to talk about something a little bit less clinical and more everyday with you all. So thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I hope you can get a lot out of this presentation and are able to eat more mindfully after this. So here's a little outline of what I'm going to talk about tonight. First, we'll kind of discuss what is mindfulness. So it's a huge part of what mindful eating is. Then we'll talk about what really is mindful eating. I'll also talk about what mindful eating is not. Some benefits to eating mindfully. Then we'll go into how to actually eat mindfully and do that. And we'll do a little activity. That's why I asked you to have some piece of food. Anything is fine, just anything that you can interact with. We'll also discuss some barriers to mindful eating, because it's not as easy as some people make it seem. I also want to touch on some mindful eating and how it relates to food insecurity. If anyone has children at home, how to raise a mindful eater. And we'll also talk about mindful eating and food waste and sustainability. So I got this definition from Psychology Today. So mindfulness is a state of active, open attention to the present. This state is described as observing one's thoughts and feelings without judging them as good or bad. So mindfulness, I feel like mindfulness is very in right now, and for good reason. I feel like it's a good trend, especially with everything going on. And it's like this definition says, it's, being open and attentive to the present, minimizing distractions, observing thoughts and feelings without judging them as good or bad. So that's a huge part of mindfulness is when sometimes you just get overwhelmed with these thoughts. So kind of taking a pause and just recognizing, oh, that's a thought, and not judging that as like, oh, am I a bad person for thinking this? Like, am I X or Y or Z for thinking this? Just that's a thought. That's a thing that's happening. We don't have to attach ourselves to it. So mindfulness has roots in a lot of Eastern traditions: Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. But I think what we're most familiar with in the West is mindfulness from the Buddhist tradition. In Buddhism, sati means mindfulness, and it's the first step towards enlightenment. And it was popularized in the West by a professor named Jon Kabat-Zinn. He founded the Center for Mindfulness at the UMass Medical School. And he created a form of therapy called mindfulness-based stress reduction, based on the Buddhist concept of mindfulness. He trained with Buddhist teachers like Thich Nhat Hanh. And so his main idea with mindfulness-based stress reduction is that trying to avoid pain only leads to more stress or suffering. So if you're constantly trying to fight against whatever pain you're having or circumstances, like that's just going to lead to more stress and suffering. And the way to kind of reduce the stress is to just accept it and acknowledge it. So what is mindful eating? I want to go back to that definition of mindfulness and see how we can kind of apply it to eating, because you can really apply mindfulness to anything. You can be having a mindful golf game when you're active and open attention to the present. You're not judging yourself. You can have a mindful hangout with a friend. So mindful eating in this context, mindful eating is being active and open to the meal you're sitting down to eat, being aware of it. It's very hard for us to be mindful eaters these days when there's just so much going on. We have, busy schedules. We might just like sit down and grab a bag of chips and finish it and not even know we ate it. And it also includes not judging your thoughts and feelings. So we'll get more into that later, but there's definitely a lot of like diet culture and these cultural norms that make us think like our body's not good enough, or what we're eating might be bad or not good enough, not healthy enough. So mindful eating really is trying to fight against all those outside sources and just get back to yourself and get back to like how you're feeling. So again, mindful eating, an active, open attention to the meal or food in front of you. It's observing your thoughts and feelings about the food without judging them as good or bad. So eating with a conscious awareness and being aware of what you're eating, tapping into your hunger and fullness cues, thinking about the way food tastes and smells, thinking about where it came from. Also, you can totally feel free to anyone raise your hand if you have any questions, and I can stop. So mindful eating is not a diet. It's possible that someone's weight can change if they switch from unconscious eating to mindful eating, just because a lot of times if we're eating unconsciously, we might be taking in more food than we need because we're just thinking about, or we're not really thinking, or you're not even in tune with your hunger fullness cues, so you're not eating enough. But again, mindful eating is not a diet because it doesn't involve restricting intake or food rules. And so mindful eating and like intuitive eating have been around for a while. Dietitians are starting to use this in practice because we're seeing that dieting is not effective. It's actually more harmful. It does more harm than good. There's a lot of research being done on weight bias and fat phobia and the racist origins of BMI and how BMI is not a great indicator of health. So while all this great work is being done, unfortunately, some entrepreneurial companies are taking that and running with it. Like if you've ever heard of the company Noom, that's really a diet. They like to say they're all about mindful eating and getting in touch with the psychology of food, but if you actually look at it, it's a diet. So just be aware, when you're seeing companies talk about mindful eating. Mindful eating is not a diet. Mindful eating is not going to ask you to judge foods as good or bad, or restrict your intake, or have silly rules like you can't eat after 6 p.m. Like if your body is hungry after 6 p.m., absolutely eat. That's fine. So there's a lot of benefits of eating more mindfully and just being more, in touch and in tune with your body. And I'll get into how to actually know when you're hungry and know like what you need later on. So eating mindfully can help reduce stress and anxiety. You can develop a healthier relationship to food because you've taken away the judgment of it, and it's just, we're eating so we can feel good in our bodies and give our bodies what they need in the moment. Can help with indigestion and gastrointestinal issues. If you're, someone who tends to sit down and just sort of scarf your food down, not even think about it, mindful eating sort of is the opposite of that because it's asking us to sit down, to be present with our food, to chew thoroughly, to actually like engage and be aware of what we're tasting and how it, how we like the food. It can enhance your social connections if you're eating with other people, you're sitting, you're eating, you're talking, listening to other people. You're in the moment without distractions. It can help increase your satisfaction with food. Just bring a deeper appreciation and awareness of what you're eating and where it comes from. It can also help reduce overeating, which in turn, helps with indigestion, stomach problems, because you're back in tune with your hunger cues and like how much you want to eat and how much you need to eat. It can also help be more aware of maladaptive thoughts about food. If you're someone who tends to be really judgmental of yourself and what you're eating, it can just help you kind of slow down and tune back into what you need to eat and what your body needs.
Katie, we actually have a question in the
Oh,
chat.
yeah.
Can Ayurveda be practiced with mindful eating?
Can Ayurveda be practiced with mindful eating? I think so. I mean, I don't know a ton about Ayurveda. I have looked into it. There are some people who think that it is restrictive because it does seem to some of the rules of Ayurveda I do feel like are a little bit restrictive. I know there's a concept like you shouldn't eat fruit with anything else. So it's a good question. I think it can be if if your body responds well to Ayurveda and that's something you practice, then you can certainly integrate aspects of mindful eating. You can also, you can kind of go against like the Ayurveda rules because we really don't need to force like strict food rules around us. Everybody's different. And I know Ayurveda is like only there's like 3 different diets you can have. So I think you can integrate mindful eating into Ayurveda. Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay, so we'll do a little assessment. Are you eating mindfully? So just think about these questions as I ask them. So what was think about the last meal or snack that you ate. Are you able to recall what it tasted like? Are you able to think about the different flavors that it had? Can you remember any of the textures of the food? Was it soft, hard? Was it, I don't know, is there a lot of liquid? What did it sound like when you were chewing? Was it crunchy, sort of soft? And who did you eat with? And what did you talk about? What did you discuss? So if you can't really answer any of those questions, that's probably a good sign that you're not super mindful when you're eating, and that's okay. Most of us are not. there's a lot going on in the world. It's stressful. It's a stressful time to be a human. And it's just really easy to eat and not even think about eating. It's, you know, sometimes we're doing a million things at once. We're eating at our desk, eating on the go, on the train, at work. Ate lunch during a meeting, but remember, okay, good. All right. So it's, you know, halfway mindful. That's great. Okay. So here's some, yeah, not rules, but little steps to eat mindfully. And I'll go through each of these. And if you have your food item ready, that'd be great. Well, we can do a little practice. So minimize distractions. Obviously, I hope you're not gonna turn your computer off right now. But yeah, minimizing distractions is the first step to eating mindfully. Just taking the time to like actually sit down and enjoy your meal can really enhance like your pleasure and your enjoyment of your meal. Pausing to take a breath is really important. Gets you back in touch with, you know, your body and your nervous system. Checking in with your hunger, engaging your senses, all 5 senses. Practice non-judgment, and then again in like, you know, the middle of the meal, towards the end of the meal, you want to like check in with your hunger again, just to make sure you know, you're getting what you need. So first step in eating mindfully, minimize distractions. I know it's so common for people to like turn on the TV and watch a show while they eat dinner, or okay, yes, yeah. So yeah, I'll answer that question in a second. So especially with like when you're watching TV, you're not focusing on anything but what's on the TV. Like, I don't know how many people this has happened to. You've sat down with like a bag of chips to watch TV, and you look at the bag and you're like, it's done. I don't even remember eating those. Like I didn't even taste them because your focus is just on the TV. And yeah, it's definitely normal to get hungry. If you see, when you watch TV and see food commercials or the TV show Eating, that's what they're paying. That's what they're paying millions of dollars for, is for you to have those reactions. And so yeah, it's very, very normal to feel hungry when you see a really delicious food on TV. Also, yeah, eating while driving. Not only is it unsafe, but it's, you know, you're not really engaged in. Oh no, we're not going to start right now. I'll let you know when. So yeah, if you're eating while you're driving, 1, it's unsafe. You might crash. 2, you're not engaged in what you're eating, because hopefully you're focused on the road. Eating on the train, honestly, I do it sometimes. Sometimes you got to do it. I feel like I shouldn't have put that one there, because you can totally be mindful and eat on the train if you need to. I think it's possible. If you've developed that just like willpower to focus on the train and cut out and block out the distractions. Okay. So before we eat, we're going to pause, take a deep breath, take a couple deep breaths if you want. So deep breathing helps you, helps your nervous system come back online, helps you just like get in the moment, and breathing more, taking more deep breaths is definitely more beneficial. Just helps you like kind of put away the distractions, put away your thinking, like just focus on your breath, engage in this one moment. And then after you take a deep breath, you can kind of check, you're more able to check in with your body and kind of notice how hungry you are. So this is the hunger fullness scale on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is where you're starving, you feel weak and dizzy. Hopefully we are there not very often, because that's not a great place to be. 10 is so full you feel sick. That could be like after a Thanksgiving meal. And yeah, that's also not a fun place to be when you're so full you feel sick, you feel like you might throw up. So ideally you want to kind of start the meal in around like a 3 or 4, and you want to end in like a 5, maybe like a 6. You want to end in like a 6 or up to 7. And your body might not, you might not feel like the whole spectrum of these, but this is just a nice guide to know, like, kind of start checking in with your hunger. And we're actually people are born with the innate ability to tell when they're hungry. That's why like babies, babies will cry when they're hungry, because they know when they're hungry, when they're done, they're going to stop eating. They're not going to overeat, because that's just like not a concept to them. Like they know what they feel like. They know when they're hungry, they know when they're not hungry. But we lose this over time, just because life, we get, we see snacks, we are influenced by the media and snack companies, and our schedules might make us eat when we're not hungry. So it's very normal to, like, when you're starting out and like mindful eating, to not really be able to tell like when you're hungry, when you're full. Also, sometimes we might mistake hunger as like, well, not mistake hunger, but we'll mistake like a desire to go get some food as like boredom, or trying to avoid a feeling. So it's good to check in with your hunger like before you eat, just so you know, like, okay, how much food am I needing to eat right now? Like, what do I need? Do I need a big meal? Do I need a small meal? Is something else going on? Am I upset? Am I maybe not actually hungry and I'm just trying to avoid this really hard feeling? Like, is there another activity I could do? Like, could I journal or call a friend? So after you take a deep breath, you want to check in with your hunger and just kind of put your attention to your stomach. Personally, right now, I'm not full or hungry. Yeah, I'm not full, I'm not hungry. I could have a little snack though, if that's what's happening. Maybe I'll have a little snack. Okay, so you can now you can pick up your food. I have an apple, and just kind of take a minute, look at it, see what it looks like, describe it to yourself. Does anyone wanna practice for us and share what they have? Do you want to? Oh,
I can.
Oh, Claudia, yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, sorry. Here, chocolate egg.
Oh.
It has an almond inside. I have 3 of those.
Okay. Yum.
Yeah. So looking at it, it's smooth, it's shiny. It has like little coconut inserts, and they look very yummy. I think this is not going to be enough. I'm going to need the 3 of them. So should I start eating it now?
Okay. Yeah. So we can take, everyone, if you want to take a bite. And when you take a bite, when you chew thoroughly. There's no like special number of times you have to chew, but if you chew thoroughly, it's actually better for your digestion, because you start digesting. There enzymes in your mouth actually help start digesting the food. So the more you chew, the easier it's gonna go down. You've probably I'm sure we've all experienced this where you take a big bite of something and you just swallow it and it just kind of gets stuck. That's a real thing. So when you want to chew a couple times, listen to it, see what it sounds like. What does it taste like? Personally, my apple is pretty juicy. It's a little bit mealy, I'm not gonna lie. It's not a great apple. It's not apple season. This apple has probably been in storage for a couple months. I'm not sure where it comes from. Not sure who grew it, but yeah. Do you want to tell us about your almonds, Claudia?
They were very good. Well, I just have one. And yeah, the chocolate is a little mild and the almond tasted fresh.
Nice. Yeah, and so other things, you can think about when you're eating, where it came from, because I think that's a very exciting ongoing conversation in the food world right now. There's a lot of talk about food labor, people growing food, where what's involved in getting this food to you, and just like showing gratitude and thinking, being grateful for the food you have is another way to just increase your satisfaction and your pleasure and joy with your eating. And so while we're eating, we want to practice non-judgment. So the diet culture loves to tell us that foods are good or bad. Like, oh, you shouldn't eat a hamburger, you shouldn't eat fast food, you shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't eat that, you have to eat this certain way. And that's not true at all. So you can start kind of observing thoughts that come up while you eat, and you might have some judgment, but just kind of label that thought as like, okay, that's a thought, that's an idea. We don't have to attach to it. We don't have to think about it too hard. Just notice that's an idea. And yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about diet culture and health and so again, we're fed through the media and all these different sources that that certain foods are bad or good, and that's not true. All foods can fit into a healthy diet. I'll share some resources after the presentation, some really interesting articles about just how like measures of obesity and BMI have really like harmful and racist origins, and just like the insistence on like using BMI in the medical setting actually causes more harm than good. So that's a really interesting like conversation that's happening in the dietetics world right now, which is I think for the better, and hopefully in our lifetime we'll see doctors not using BMI to measure health, and instead asking questions like, well, what do you do for a job? What do you who do you live with? What are your stresses, social determinants of health, and just getting a whole picture of like holistic picture of the person, instead of what they weigh or how much they weighed before, or and that's good for everyone, really. And so towards, while you're eating your snack, or towards the end, check in with your hunger again. And this isn't something that you have to do every single time you eat, but it can be a good practice, like, because like you're not meditating every single time you have a free moment, But so mindful eating and doing this practice is not something that you have to do certainly every single time you eat, but it can be a good, it can be something, it can be good to start integrating into your day and just kind of notice like how you feel differently when you are engaged and present in what you're eating versus when you might be less present or watch or eat while you're distracted, and just kind of notice without judgment the differences in how you feel in both like your emotions and in your body too. So again, some barriers to mindful eating, just the constant and ever-present diet culture and fat phobia in our society, time limitations. Sometimes we don't have time to sit down and, like really think about what we're eating. Sometimes we're on the run, and that's okay. We don't want to judge ourselves. Like, we are who we are. We're living, we don't want to add more stress to our days. Also, not being in tune with our hunger cues is another barrier to mindful eating, and it can be really hard to understand like when you're hungry, and or whether like you're going to eat as a way to sort of distract from something else. It's really hard, especially if those are like habits that you formed. So again, let's we don't want to be judgmental of ourselves, because that's going to create more stress. And external distractions are also another barrier to mindful eating. Living in New York City, there's a lot of them. There's also a lot going on in the news, and it's stressful. So these are barriers, but they can be overcome. And we also don't want to stress out if we're experiencing these barriers. So I also want to touch a little bit on mindful eating and food insecurity. So this is, if you've taken the psychology course, you've seen this, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the idea is that in order to achieve a need from the next higher level, you need the foundational needs. So psychological needs are food, water, shelter, clothing. Mindful eating and being able to kind of put away the distractions is kind of falls into the self-actualization, which is at the top. So if you don't have enough to eat, it can be incredibly hard to like sit down and do this work. So and do this practice. And yeah, it can be really difficult. I'm also going to include in some resources for that Healthy CUNY has put out for food pantries and different like food assistance if anyone's having a problem getting enough food. And so if you're let me see, there's a question. Physiological. Probably meant, yes, I probably did mean physiological needs. I can edit that. So if you're a parent, I had some classmates of mine, I asked them like, what would you like to see in this presentation? And some were like, how can we raise mindful eaters? So I think that's a great topic. So if you're a parent, you can absolutely teach your kids to be more mindful eaters, first by setting a good example. Set an example of mindful eating. Put your phone away at the table, talk to your kids, encourage play and exploration, encourage kids to help out in the kitchen. I find I'm a former food educator, and I really found that kids get really excited to eat food and try new foods if they've had a hand in preparing it, or even like growing it. If you have a little garden or want to like plant a spinach or herbs in your window, that's a really great way to get kids to kind of tune into what they're eating and be curious about it. And excuse me, banishing the clean plate club is also a really important way to raise a mindful eater. Especially I know, like, I feel like my generation and previous generations, it was all about like, finish your dinner or you won't get this. And that really does not help anyone get in tune with their hunger cues, because the goal becomes to finish your plate instead of eat until you're not hungry anymore. Or food pushing. Yeah, food pushing is a big one. And especially in, a lot of cultures, you show respect by eating enough, eating more food. So it can be really hard even as an adult to push against that and just kind of stand firm and like, oh no, I'm okay. I feel full. And also offering food choices instead of being sort of open-ended about food. So if you say like to a kid, do you want, instead of like, you need to eat your vegetables, because kids don't respond well to that, give them a choice. Like, do you want broccoli or spinach? Have them be, involved in the food decision process, and have family meals if you can, if you have the time and space for it. It's really, really beneficial for kids to sit down and have a meal with their family, have conversation, check in, and set a good example, be a good mindful eating role model at the table. So also want to touch on mindful eating and food waste. There's a lot of conversation about food waste and sustainability now. And so at least for me, when I eat at a restaurant, I'm always like, oh, I don't want to waste any food. Like, so I'll just eat all of it, even if that means I'm eating past my fullness. So you can either, get food to go. Well, get your a portion of your food wrapped up at the end, or you can bring your own like reusable takeout containers to be more sustainable. You're not using additional plastic. You can plan ahead when you go food shopping. So really kind of plan out your recipes for the week. If you need like some herb for like a different herb for 2 different meals, maybe pick one herb and use them for both, even if that's not in the recipe. Just kind of mix and match and swap. And then if you're at a kind of like family dinner or dinner with friends, like take only what you're hungry for. Hopefully you'll be able to go back for seconds if you need them, but be mindful of how much you want to eat, and just take what you're hungry for. You don't need to overload your plate. And then, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for coming. I also wanted to share this resource for if you're having, you need help getting food. There are CUNY student food navigators. I'm also going to send I can drop it in the chat. I have some resources for mindful eating, some articles and books, and then some food resources for CUNY students. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question, Katie.
Yeah.
I heard you mention how the BMI has racist origins, and I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about that.
Yeah,
Like
yes. I actually just went to a really great talk yesterday with this sociology professor named Sabrina Springs. And so she wrote this book called, let me pull it up. I put it in the resources. So it's called Fearing the Black Body, the Racial Origins of Fat Phobia. And it's her research kind of goes into, it encompasses a lot of like, she used like history, and goes into how like in the Renaissance, voluptuous bodies were the norm. That's what was in the paintings. Like that's what we saw. And then I might get the timeline a little bit wrong, but essentially that sort of started shifting with slavery. And so people, you know, we wanted to separate the races, and whiteness and thinness started becoming the ideal, while fatness and blackness was wrong and bad, and we don't want that. And BMI was actually created by some white guy based on some other white guys, and it's not representative of the entire population. It's only like representative of white guys. And it's actually like, you know, it's very harmful because some people's bodies are just larger than others, but we have this standard, and it creates, you know, it creates all sorts of problems. And in the medical field, like BMI is still used, and it's really like there's other ways to assess health that are not BMI. It's super flawed. So this is a great book. I also, in that, in the resources, I did put some relevant articles. This is, I'll drop one right now, that is an interview with Professor Strings, where she talks about how BMI is racist and sexist. So it's a great read, and it's a good conversation that we need to start having, especially in the public health field, where we are always using BMI. Like BMI is correlated to obesity and all these other things, and it's like, it might not be. There might be a ton of other things going on, like stress and food access, that we need to focus on. And unfortunately, BMI is just really easy. It's really easy to have a calculation and correlate these things, but it might not be the most accurate way to assess problems on a population level.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm like constantly trying to sneak this in everywhere now, like in my work in the hospital, like in this, like it's not necessarily connected to mindful eating, but it is. But yeah, I definitely wanted to mention that, because I think it's just important that we start having this conversation and people find out about this and get mad.
Well, and also I'll just add to that. So like I have a higher BMI, but I have a higher BMI because I lift weights. And like obviously BMI doesn't take into account, you know, muscle versus fat. Like they just think that because of the pounds that that you're just fat, and it's like, no, actually I need protein because I need it if I'm gonna do, like, if I just came from working out, like I need the protein, like it's not, and like I need it in order to build muscle and like that sort of thing. And I've heard of that, Katie, since like 2017, and ever since like I noticed I started lifting more, like certain things pop up, and then as soon as I tell my physicians that I lift weights, they're like, oh, that makes sense, and then they forget, like but again, I think, Katie, you're bringing up a really great conversation. Is you need to be having conversations with your physicians, with your medical professionals, as to why your BMI could be, you know, different.
Yeah, and it's harmful for everyone. It's harmful for folks who are told your BMI means you're obese and you need to lose weight. That's not a great way to welcome someone into your medical practice. That's not a great way to get someone to think that you care about them. That's a great way for someone to not seek medical attention because they're afraid they're going to be judged or told they have to lose weight. And it's really hard to lose weight. It's like it's quite hard. That can become like your whole life, and you just obsess about food and losing weight, like for what? It's also harmful. It definitely feeds eating disorders, because at the root of eating disorders, part of it is like a fat phobia and fear of like being in a larger body. So if, you know, we're not talking about BMI, like we can talk about so many other things and just, and not have as much stress. So yeah, I definitely feel strongly about this research, and I'm glad it's happening. Any other questions?
Thank you. This was a very good reminder, particularly at the end of the semester when we crave things just to keep. Well, I should just say for myself, when I just start craving things because I feel anxious.
Yeah. And you know, sometimes it's okay like to have a snack when we feel anxious, but it's good to recognize like if that's our default, like are there other ways we can self-soothe? Because it also is not, it's just not great for you to be constantly snacking. It's not great for your teeth. It's good to like give your body time to digest. So if we're constantly like putting food into our mouths, like our organs, our digestive system is working all the time. So it is good to have, you know, some separation between meals. And yeah, it's good to recognize like when, if we're hungry or just anxious or bored or anything like that.
Is it good to give into your cravings? Like I've been craving like crunchy pita chips, and I just had as the snack like a replacement of rice, um, whatever the rice like snacks. So, but I'm still craving like pita chips.
And then give into your craving of pita chips. If you want pita chips, eat some pita chips, because you're just going to think about that until you get those pita chips. And it's like not really I don't know, it's you could, you know, you could think it's a I mean, everybody's different. So some people like maybe they'd be satisfied with a rice chip, but if you want a pita chip, like eat the pita chip. Also, like your body's gonna know when to stop, because it's very unlikely that you're gonna just like keep eating pita chips. Like you'll have them, and if you're mindful about it, if you sit down and you kind of appreciate it and taste it, and don't just like scarf the whole bag, which I've done before if I have a craving, especially for like a salty snack. It's so easy to just like eat the whole bag. But I think, yeah, if you're having a craving, honor that and eat what you want to eat. Just be mindful about it. Be mindful and curious and non-judgmental about what you're eating. And your body will, if you do this as a practice, like your body will know when to stop, when you're satisfied. Any other questions? That was a great question. And yeah, restrictions are, I don't believe in restricting anything, because that's just going to make you want it more. And then once you get it, there's like a whole like cycle of restricting, when, you know, you restrict and then you get the food and then you feel guilty about it. And then you start craving it because you're thinking about it. And it's just a whole cycle. So like we can break the cycle by honoring our cravings, not judging them as good or bad, like, oh, I'm a bad person, I have no willpower. Like, no, that's what your body wants right now. Like maybe you need a little bit of sodium. That's okay. Your body's doing what it's designed to do, what it's meant to do. It's helping you.
Well, Katie, I want to thank you so much for sharing vital information with us and also creating a space where we feel comfortable asking these questions and having this discussion. It's been really great. Thank you so much for sharing these resources as well.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for
yeah.
coming and asking questions.
Yeah, and thank you students so much for coming and for engaging in the way that you've engaged. That truly makes the difference. And I just want to share with you that Health and Wellness Week continues tomorrow, and there are 2 events that will be happening tomorrow. One on restorative circles, particularly in the context of group work. And the other is a film that we're showing on transgender healthcare at Mount Sinai Hospital, followed by panel discussion. And I will put that in the chat now. You can RSVP if you're interested in either of those. So unless anyone has any questions or comments, we will conclude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for spending your Thursday evening with me.
Thanks to you.